Hi, welcome to Smith & Grez's April podcast. This follows a huge, massive postbag full of emails, text messages, replies, all sorts of things. We've had loads of phone calls from the last one, which was a dangerous dilution of adjudicating in brass banding. Sandy, it's been quite remarkable the amount of people that have contacted us.
It's probably quite easily the most response we've had in all sorts of different ways to this. The number of phone calls we've had, messages, text messages, speaking to people, it's been very, very enlightening.
It's also stripped out, by a long way, it's the biggest listened podcast we've ever done.
So that in itself, I don't mind people disagreeing, that's fine. I just want to generate discussion. And if that's what it's doing, I think this is a very, very serious issue for us in banding in this country. And if people are talking about it, all the better. And if people are interested enough, it shows that they do care. But we just want to go through a few things, some of the responses we've had, and address some of the things that have come up through that.
We've had some very surprising calls from people at the very top as well, haven't we?
Yeah.
It's blown my socks off, the amount of interest that there is about this. And there is some disagreements with what we say, which we always expected.
That's fine.
But there's a hell of a lot of agreement.
There is. And one thing that I've noticed with talking to people, and we've said this quite a few times, the way that people speak in private is different to the sort of the social media, social theatre face that's put on about this. When people are talking off the record, they're far more open. And I think there are certain people are a little bit scared of criticising the adjudicators, because especially before the contest, because they think it's somehow going to go against them. But we can cover that when we get to it. But we've had loads of really good responses, disagreeing and agreeing with us, and I think it's just worth going through a few to talk about what they brought up.
Now, the first one's from a chap I know from, I think he was at Desford years ago, and he did a stint under James Watson at Blackdyke, and he's recently played with Corey Bandit. It's a chap called David Griffiths. He's actually a professional percussion player. He wrote in quite a detailed thing. Do you want to read it out, Sandy?
Yeah, go on. So this is the gist of it anyway. This is Dave's opinion. He's talking about adjudicators. Individuals find their way through, and God knows how, and manage to have a successful career. Whether it be down to money, friends, gift of the gab, or whatever, these people exist. To think that many qualified, gifted, and more importantly, and he's got this in capital letters, experienced, top-level professionals are not being approached by the organisers is also testament to what lets this amateur movement down. But I guess it happens in all walks of life. To think that some judges out there who are at the peak of their personal playing career included winning the odd local contest at first section level at the most, and who then find themselves adjudicating important contests after completing a training course, is the dumbest thing ever, and just doesn't make any sense to me. Again, it just lets the movement down and makes it a laughing stock. And then he's got in brackets, exception to those who are talented and have proven their worth. And he finishes off saying, again, I'll use the word, and he's got capital letters, experience at top level for at least 25 years is what's required. So that's Dave's take on it, which is... It's well.
There's a bit of nail on head on that.
There is. I mean, and he's it's certainly an opinion he's very strong about, and he's been there for a long time, played under good people, done a load of stuff. That's his take on it. So there are people sort of disgruntled with the
Yeah.
way with the way things are.
Yeah.
Another one we got from Gordon Edison. Gordon, well known in this neck of the woods, experienced.
He's a lovely fella, Gordon. I've known him for donkey's years.
He is, and he's a proper Yorkshire. Let's call a spade type.
Yeah, funny fella as well.
Yeah, it's funny. He is funny. Just a little thing that Gordon put up somewhere. I'm sure that we can all take something from Sandy and Simon's podcast. They're intended to promote discussion. Yes, they are. I, for one, have scratched my head and buried my face in the palms of my hands on hearing some comments from the stage or in written adjudications. And I think what he was alluding to there was this idea that, everybody's wonderful, give yourselves a clap, all that sort of thing,
Yeah.
So, I mean, he was very experienced. He had a band at Huddersfield in the 80s, played very well, actually. You could tell it was someone,
brass, wasn't it?
You could tell it was someone who knew what they were doing in charge of it.
Yeah.
We have had some dissenters, which is fine. No problem with that at all.
Yeah.
Do you want to read the first one out?
Yeah. This is from Laura Reid, who I think lives in Aberdeen. Haven't listened to any other podcasts, but did listen to the Adjudicators one. Honestly, they sound like grumpy old men that didn't get what they wanted or having a tantrum. Very repetitive, saying the same thing 30 different ways. Having Googled and found the judge they were absolutely ripping into, there was a hell of a lot more on the CV than they quoted. Maybe they applied for the adjudicator course and were rejected. That's what the Tantrum podcast said to me. They didn't come across as people who couldn't give a balanced opinion on anything. I said I wasn't going to comment as it wasn't worth my energy, but here we are.
Right, okay. Yeah.
Grumpy old men. Yep. I don't mind admitting I can be a bit grumpy at times.
Yeah. They didn't get what they wanted. Well, I'm not sure she really knows.
She mustn't know us.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've had a cake and eating it out of brass pans. We're just trying to help.
Absolutely. I would give her this though. It was very repetitive.
Yeah.
And that was deliberate because I think it's one of the most important subjects we have to talk about in banding at the minute. Yeah. And if it means repeating and repeating and repeating the same stuff over and over till the message gets through, then I've got no problem with that whatsoever.
No.
And as for I don't think we were ripping into someone, really. We mentioned about the grade 8 thing being on a CV. I absolutely stand by that, though.
But the point was, Sandy, we only mentioned that because if you're having to recite to people things like that, it gives a signal that you haven't actually done much anyway.
If you're having to bulk a CV out with that sort of stuff, and to be fair to it, I did go back and read it, the CV of the adjudicator in question. There's nothing else on it.
No.
There's a lot of stuff that's not related at all to music, but I still stand by that. I absolutely stand by it. Tantrum podcast? I don't know. This is the trouble now. It doesn't take much to knock people off kilter and disagree. I'll
just say on that particular judge, Sandy, there's a load of letters behind his name. And it makes it look as if he's, really important musically. But none of them letters relate to music.
Right.
Okay. They relate to his job.
But there you go. She's still, Thanks for listening, Laura. That's fine. I don't really mind if you disagree, but I think, the sort of things where we're being accused of having a tantrum because we didn't get what we want. I don't think that's, but there we go. We got another one from Diane Scott. I got 25 minutes into the adjudication one and had enough. Elitist crap. A brief mention of lower section bands, then and she's got in quotes, the only contests that matter are the nationals, guessing the Albert Hall, the European and the Open. So 99% of us can get in the bin. Right, so let's look at that for a start.
Yeah.
She's got totally, she might have been listening, but not listening properly, because when I mentioned about the only contests that matter are the nationals, the European and the Open, I was talking about the standards of people who should be adjudicating should have, I think, if they're banders, I think they should have experience and success at those levels. I'm not talking about all banders, that the only 3 contests in the world that matter are the nationals, the European and the Open. That's ridiculous.
Not in this world.
But I think that's just the wrong end of the stick. Right?
Yeah.
That's certainly not what we're saying. So again, she's just got the wrong end of the stick. And then she went on to say, and inexperienced adjudicators, this is supposed to be us talking, inexperienced adjudicators can lead to wrong promotions and relegations. Yes, they do.
Absolutely.
And then she says, like that would never happen with big names. Well, I think it's less likely to happen with people who are experienced in and have playing and conducting credentials that can be admired.
I'll say it again, Sandy. You know, we said this. Somebody who's experienced, you're more likely to take on board what they're saying. But if an inexperienced judge stands there and relegates you start questioning it. It's all about levels.
We've had emails, which we're not going to read out, and I've spoken to people as well who are very experienced people and say, look, I have no problem at all having not winning or being placed down by someone who knows what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Right? Someone that they can respect, who has proven musical credentials.
Yeah.
They do have a problem if it's someone who is inexperienced. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all.
No.
Then she says, they kept griping on about gravitas, but it wasn't the correct usage. Well, gravitas, I looked it up, means the literal meaning is weight, seriousness and importance of manner, causing feelings of respect and trust in others, having credibility. That's exactly what we were using it as, having credibility.
Well, to be fair, we didn't use that. It was the email that we had in from one of our listeners who mentioned that word gravitas. We thought it were a good word, so we kept using it.
Yeah, we did, and I still think it's a good word. Yeah. A lot of I deserve to be adjudicated by someone I deem to be as good enough for me, which is so entitled. No, it's not.
No,
it's not entitled, and we've got examples later on that we're going to talk about in other disciplines that will show this. But I mean, I remember one of the best musicians I've ever had interaction with musically, Elgar Howarth.
Yeah.
Mr. Howarth gave in contesting in the mid-70s. He did a bit and he eventually packed in because he felt like some of the people that were in the box weren't operating at his level. Now, I am in no way in a million years putting myself in the category of an Elgar Howarth.
No.
But he has a point. And I think that's what we're on about. This has been diluted over a long number of years, the quality of adjudicators. And we have got some figures in that to look at that a little bit later on. And I don't think there's anything wrong with thinking that the judges have to have your respect. How do they get that? They do it through the musical credentials. Yeah. And unfortunately, there are too many people these days who haven't done that.
No.
They've basically sort of engineered their way in on some sort of training course, which seems still to be quite mysterious and secretive, without having just looking at the musical credentials that they should have done through their playing or conducting.
Yeah.
You know. Then she finishes off, contests are silly. and the results should be taken with a pinch of salt. Really?
It's what the whole brass band movement's built on, I'm afraid.
I think if you think contests are silly, don't go to them. That's fine. No problem. Just don't bother. Don't bother going. But let's be brutally honest. Contesting, brass band contesting is a sport.
It is.
Okay. And there are all sorts of issues about borrowing players and stuff. Yeah. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. But it's a sport. You have to set your stall out with an attitude that you want to win.
Yeah.
And if you think contests are silly,
just stay away.
Just don't bother doing them.
Yeah.
The only real opinion, this is the last bit she says, the only real opinion people trust is the one that lets them win. No, that is not true. That is not true.
So wide of the mark, it's unreal.
I would rather be told by someone of respect to say, yeah, once a good today, I've got you 5th out of 8, you know. Why? Well, there was this wrong, there was that, whatever else. Yeah, well, that's fine. If it's someone who I know can hear and can demonstrate their abilities as a musician, then I think that's fine. That's just wide of the mark.
Yeah.
Maybe she's not had very good, good time doing contesting.
Yeah. We had another one from a chap called John Penton. Hello both. Thanks for a great podcast. Keep it going. I agree absolutely. There is an absolute need to be adjudicated by who we can look up to.
Yeah. Yeah, by people, I think that's what he means there, by people who we can look up to. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's all it is. There's one here, this was a very interesting one, from a young lad called Alec Bland. And I'll summarise what he said. This is all his words, but I've had to, cut it down slightly. Hi, Sandy and Simon. My question for discussion for you is that where is the support stroke guidance for young-ish, I'm 29, conductors stroke adjudicators that love brass banding and want to train to be an adjudicator? As you're both incredible musicians who have been at the top, blah, 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 for such a long time, I just wanted to reach out to see if you could have a chat about this on your podcast and also seek both your advice on what to do next. Encouraging the youth of the band movement is something that's been neglected for years. I do not want to leave this as I love doing it so much, but I have faced a continued uphill battle against all those who run the brass band movement. Thanks for taking time to read my message. Kind regards, Alex. So he was on about, he's obviously a very enthusiastic lad.
Yes, he is.
And he wants to get into, he plays, he conducts and all this, and he wants to get into adjudicating. And how do I do it, basically, right? So I think it's great that someone is that enthusiastic about it. My advice to Alex would be, just stick at it, Alex. Carry on gaining experience. Yeah. And I think this is one of the problems we have at the minute is that we never used to have inexperienced adjudicators. We do now. We do now. I know what people will say, well, how do you get experience if you don't? I think you have to rack up a really good number of years playing.
29 is very young to be a judge, isn't it?
I think so.
Very young.
I think that you should be concentrating at the moment on your playing and
your conducting and building your credibility up.
I remember Harry Mortimer, a lot of people won't even know who he is now, saying to me he packed in playing when he was 40. Yeah. To conduct, and he said to me, I've got cassette tapes of this interview that I did with him. I wish I hadn't packed in. I wish I'd played longer. Really? Learned more. Yeah. Now, that's an extreme example, and we're talking about one of the legendary figures of the band movement ever. But I think people are jumping the gun far too early, and I don't think they have, again, the gravitas to to purport to do what they're trying to do.
You see,
I think
Alex is fairly local to me, and he's doing really well. He's got 2 bands, and he's it's not in a hotbed of banding, and basically he's doing well. But keep it going, Alex, and give it 10, 15 years. Have another think about it then.
I wouldn't be in such a rush, Alex, to get into it. I know why, because there is a seeming sort of importance to it or whatever. But there's also, and I think this is a problem with a little bit of it, there's an awful lot of people trying to do it for a bit of pin money and sort of keep their finger in lots of different pies to make a bit of brass.
Yeah.
And I think they're too young. I think they're too inexperienced. I think
you'd be better getting a job at Tesco's.
Well,
pay you more.
I know that's I just think bide your time. Keep going with what you're doing. Stick with the conducting. Stick with the music making. Stick with the playing. Listen to the real top notchers in banding, and listen to stuff outside of banding as well. Do you know one thing I always remember, Sandy, is the amount of people who used to come and sit up in rehearsals at Black Dyke and at YBS when I was there and at Fairies. And there were people like Alex coming up, and our great friend Duncan Beckley was one of them. I was going to say Duncan, yeah.
And go up to them rehearsals and soak it in. It's where I learn most of my knowledge, watching how they did it, how the conductor changed a certain sound or balance, and and just pick up that, be a sponge for a number of years and get that knowledge.
It's funny, I was speaking to Gary Cutt a few days ago, and Gary said, and we were on about 2 people, because Gary's just contributed to a radio programme on Radio 3 about Mr. Howarth, about Elgar Howarth. But we're talking about Mr. Howarth and Major Parks as well. And Gary says when he was at Grimey, and Parksy was the professional, Gary was the resident. Gary says, I used to go to all the rehearsals that Parksy did.
He did.
And he says that Parksy says, so why are you coming here? Why are you don't need to be here, And he says, yeah, I do. He says, because he says every night, he says, even if it's a tiny thing, he says, I learn something from you.
Yeah. And
that was Gary Cutt.
Yeah.
So it's all about learning and keeping going. Get more experience, get more years under your belt before you bother about the adjudicating. I just wouldn't bother. I would just concentrate on the sharp end, making music.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And keep going. And no doubt that he will, if he'll
succeed in the end.
If he's this passionate about it, he will succeed. But I would suggest to him, don't jump the gun. Yeah. I think that's what's happening a lot. I think it's causing some problems.
Yeah.
Too many inexperienced young people who haven't had the success or who really know the difference. Trying to muscle in on it. I think that's where we're going wrong.
Yeah.
We've got one here that, and the correspondent wants to remain anonymous. He did give us his name. It is a he. Yeah. But there's a couple of things that I thought were worth mentioning. His first point, it says, there is a tendency, I think, to judge by mistakes, i.e. you start with 200 points, say, one split, 199, out of tune chord, 198, poor balance, 197. Even if that mechanism is subconscious, it leaves no room for reward good soloist musical playing. And I don't agree.
I don't agree with that.
We used to have a joke. I used to say, right over the years, we used to say, wouldn't it be good to have a light box on the outside of the adjudicator's box, and it starts with 200, and then you play, and then they just click a button.
Yeah.
And it goes down, and then if it gets below 175 or something, then you just get whistled off. It was a joke. It was a joke, right? Because I said you could imagine being on stage, and as soon as someone splits a note, it goes, you know, and it knocks a mark off and all that. And before you know it, the band would be sweating, looking at not looking at the conductor or the music, looking at the light box, ticking off the marks, you know, losing them. And that was meant as a joke. I don't think people judge like that. It may be, to be fair to him, it may be the perception and I think what he might be getting at, which is a good point, is that it seems people tend to think about things in terms of splits, and they maybe don't, or they see you lose marks for splits, but you don't gain marks for playing musically. Now, there is an argument, I suppose, at the minute that musical playing in certain instances is not being rewarded. And we have had instances of people who were successful at the areas, right?
I had a very interesting call with one. I won't name him. Contacting
us saying, I get my band to play in this way, in a slightly aggressive way, because
musicality is not getting rewarded, he said.
Yeah, he did say that, and it's a real shame, because the guy in question is a very musical person, and if he is having to allow his band to play in a slightly aggressive way, rather than make music, rather than take the chance in making music because he feels it's not being rewarded, then something's wrong with the system.
Yeah,
you know, and are we just rewarding bands that blow the roof off, stuff like that? The other point that this anonymous correspondent makes is, I completely agree that local committees have too much leeway in appointments. Should the bands have power of appeal to deselect certain judges? That's a tricky one. We know that in the aftermath of the areas, there are moves afoot. There have been people wanting to make representation to the area committees who pick the judges. I know in at least 2 areas where people have. I know there's been a lot of complaints in both of these areas about some of the appointments, and they're all done after the event. So basically what this guy's saying is, should they have power of appeal to deselect certain judges before the event, I'm assuming. This is where bands get cold feet. We know for a fact that people have complained about judges before the event, and they say, well, talk to the committees then about it. Talk to the organising. Oh, no, I don't want to do that, because then if they get wind that we're not happy with them, then they're going to mark us down.
That's rubbish.
I don't think that's true at all. But I think, and to be fair to the local committees, the regional committees, they're making their appointments. We've said this before. Any band in any area can have representation on that committee if they want to join the committee, right?
Yeah.
So, and I know there are some bands now talking about joining these committees, where they haven't in the past, because if that's the mechanism in place for getting things done, or talked about, or get things, to the satisfaction of the majority, then do it. But you would have to go through those local committees. So yes,
you've got to remember, Sandy, it's all right going on these committees. You've got to do some work as well.
Exactly, and so you can't just go on and moan about judges and then do bugger all else.
No,
you're going to have to turn up and organise. For instance, you said about the Home Firth contest at the weekend. There was representatives there from the Yorkshire Committee helping, helping at that local contest. Those are the sort of things that people on those committees do.
And they do a great job.
They do, and if it wasn't for those people, these contests would not run.
No.
They just would not exist. So, should the bands have more power to appeal? I think if you want to have a foot in the door with choosing who's judging, then I think you need to go through these committees for a start. He also made some very interesting points about promotion and relegation, which were quite good. But that's for another podcast. We're not going to get into that in a minute, but we will be doing something on that.
Years ago, just going back on an earlier point about the committees choosing the judges, years ago, I might be wrong here, so I will be okay to be corrected. But I'm sure that we used to have a body called the NCC, National Contesting Council, who would be responsible for picking judges for all the contests. That's stopped years ago when Boozies took over the Nationals.
Right.
And they disbanded the Contesting Council. There is a case for a central body to quality control what's going on, in my book.
I think we do need a bit of quality control here and there. I don't know. See, this is the problem. See, this all boils down to one main problem. Norway has the Norwegian Band Federation. Switzerland do the same. Belgium, all the big hitters, right? We don't have it. We couldn't agree on the colour of grass.
No.
Right? Well, we don't. It's fragmented. We don't have one body saying this is it.
And we have privately owned contests.
Yeah, we do. The two biggest contests in the country are both privately owned.
Yeah, which is where half the problem is. And it causes knock-on effect all over the place.
It might be something worth considering,
Right.
We got another email from a guy who I think we shouldn't mention his name at the minute, which will become apparent.
It didn't ask to be anonymous, did it? But we think it should.
I think to be safest, and I'll read out. It's quite a lengthy little discussion, which he has had with a relative. Yeah. I'll read out what it says for a start, and then we can pick the bones out of it. He's on about adjudicators and competency. I think this example, he says, sums up the current situation in a nutshell. I have not made this up, he puts. I have a relative who plays in a 4-section band, and the week before the regional contest this year, I gave him a ring to see how it was going. His response was a sigh. Not very well, he complained. This conductor doesn't seem to know how to fix anything or get any of the players to play better. This is not the first time he's complained about this to me about this conductor. He was not making any difference to the standard of the band, did not know how to fix problems or advise players on how to overcome technical difficulties. His key phrase when such technical difficulties arose was to say, "I can't help you with that, I'm not a brass player." Now, if this were not bad enough, he placed a message in the band's WhatsApp asking for players in the band, 4-section players, for any ideas that might improve the performance in time for the contest. He stated that he could be messaged in confidence if anybody wanted to pass their opinion. This clearly demonstrated that he was not fit to stand in front of the band. I thought it was a strange thing to do, to undermine your credibility in front of your own band. However, I wasn't prepared for what he told me next. So this is the relative speaking now. And he said, and this fella's judging at the areas in a couple of weeks on the same test piece. So he says, he carries on saying, after a quick internet search, I discovered that this guy, conductor stroke adjudicator, is also part of the adjudicating panel for this year's Saddleworth Whit Friday contest. So yes, a non-brass player and self-confessed failure gets to decide who goes to the finals and also adjudicates a march contest consisting solely of brass playing at Whit Friday. So it's quite hard hitting that. It's not really, if that is true, it's not really defendable. I could sort of see maybe if he's asking for ideas to help out. But the problem, and this isn't a criticism of this person's conducting or abilities as a conductor, but if you're admitting that you can't fix problems in a 4-section band,
Yeah.
yet you're adjudicating
At the same level.
or at
It's
any
wrong.
level, at any level.
Yeah.
I don't understand how that is moving things forward. Or I would say, to go back to that other point that was made about, we want to be judged by people who are competent, and that it's arrogant to expect, people to be, approvable by us. I think that's, and I'm definitely questioning that person's credentials to adjudicate a band contest when they can't.
I know who this chap is. I'm not going to say his name, but he's in ABBA.
So, to me, if that's true, okay, that is probably one side of a story. There may be other things in it, but I just think that we're dumbing things down.
We are.
As far as the standard of judges. And, while we're on about that, I mean, I did go through. One of the things that we seem concerned about in banding is allowing, if that's the right word, people from outside of brass bands to there seems to be a hell of a lot of hair pulling and, sort of sackcloth and ashes going on whenever we get somebody from outside of brass bands.
Yeah.
Whether that's the sort of nonsense that went on with Ian Bousfield judging at London last year, which was just frankly ridiculous.
Yeah.
But if you look through, and again, I've chosen the two flagship contests in this country, the Royal Albert Hall top section and the British Open. I went through and looked through the 50s, 60s, 70s, all the way through each decade, about people who were not directly associated with brass bands primarily. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So people from outside the movement, and there was a big surge. It started in the 60s a little bit, but in the 70s and 80s, we had a lot of people judging at the top contest whose musical credentials outstripped just being in a brass band.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. I won't mention them all. There's a huge list. 1970s. These are some of the names: Herbert Howells, Willem Tauske, Czech conductor, composer; Eric Bravington, Joe Horowitz, Joseph Horowitz, Ernest Tomlinson, Noel Cox, pianist, organist, choral conductor, professor of composition at the Royal Academy of Music; Buxton Orr, composer; Cedric Thorpe Davy. The Open, same people: Herbert Howells, Elgar Howarth, who, he started very, very, in brass bands, but Vivian Dunn, Arthur Butterworth, James Howe, Eric Wetherell, professor of French horn, professional French horn player, conductor, composer, pianist. In the 80s, same people again: Joseph Horowitz, Arthur Butterworth, David Wilcox, the great choral conductor.
Oh, yeah, I remember David Wilcox.
Derek Bourgeois, Philip Jones,
Trevor Green,
head of BBC Music, Arthur Butterworth, Bernard Keefe, John Mandwell, Maurice Hanford, professional horn player, orchestral conductor. All these people were judging.
There's Philip Jones as well.
Philip Jones, yeah, exactly. Now, you cannot question these people. I don't think Philip Jones or Arthur Butterworth or Joe Horowitz have done any sort of adjudication course.
No.
But they are top-notch professional musicians. Yeah, exactly. And then if you go through the 90s into the 2000s, right into this decade, and we're only halfway through it, but there's hardly anyone from outside brass bands. Yeah. Being used. Yeah. We've become very insular again, like we used to be in the 40s and 50s. I think there's a message there. And yes, that was the era that we were sort of brought up in. And I think this is where...
Well, I was doing my playing mainly from the 80s.
Yeah, I was. I mean, I was sort of mid-70s with Whitburn. And then, obviously, into the 80s, with very, very early 80s with Dyke and stuff. But those, nobody used to talk about adjudicators much.
No.
Because you just looked and you thought, okay, yeah, these guys are well, Philip Jones, you're not going to argue with Philip Jones.
No,
you can't. You can't argue with it. I think what we're doing now, you and I, we're still pursuing the same standards and expectations that we always had, both of ourselves and other people. That we've always had those, and all we're trying to do is we still want those standards to apply to everything. If that's too much for some people, that's not our issue.
No.
That's if some people can't hack that, that's not our problem. I'm not prepared personally to dumb things down or accept lower standards to appease those that are. I think that's where we basically stand. It's all right saying...
And them standards, Sandy, were passed down from great people.
Yeah, they were. But I think that there is a need to have top-notch people judging all over the place. And I know this is where you and I we're at loggerheads slightly, because I think you think that there are certain people that could judge lower down that couldn't judge higher up, sort of thing.
Yeah.
To make it simplistic, I think it should be the top-notchers judging everything.
I sort of agree with that, but I'm coming from a viewpoint where we've got some judges that are not too bad that I've seen.
Yeah.
Now, I did a bit of research on, and I built a big spreadsheet up of ABBA members, and it's quite enlightening. I think there's about 80 to 90, maybe more. I don't know why we need that many, but there's only certain few get jobs.
Yeah.
And them certain few happen to be on the executive.
Okay.
Which I found quite bizarre. I mean, Bob Charles is not on the executive. He got quite a lot of contests last year, but Bob is one of our premier people judging, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
But out of those 80 or 90 people, I reckon there was upwards of 30. I would not give membership of any organisation to adjudicate brass bands looking at the CVs. They just do not convince me at all. But it happens that them are the ones getting the jobs. There's loads of people, good people, not getting any work. But yet, if you're on the executive, you get a load of work.
Yeah, it is slightly strange. But there's also the fact that outside of the membership of ABBA, there are lots and lots of good people.
There is.
Lots.
Well, there's a lot more. There's a lot more than there is in ABBA. We made a list, didn't we? And it's just never ending.
Yeah, but for me, it's this idea of opening things up again and getting opinions that have real credentials about them.
Yeah.
Commenting. I think there would be all hell let loose if we said we were going to have Julian Lloyd Webber judging.
Yeah.
What the hell does he know about brass bands? Or I'm picking a name out. It could be anybody, right? Even Alison Balsam, right? So that
Philip Cobb.
Let's take Alison Balsam as an example. Okay, absolutely peerless player.
Yeah.
Right. Never done an adjudicator's course. I bet she could tell the difference between a bloody good band and a bad one without any problem at all, right? And she would have the total respect. Well, she should have the total respect of anybody who knows an ounce about music, right? Whether she wants to do it or not is another thing, right?
Yeah.
But I think, it's ABBA is not the be all and end all by a long, long way.
Yeah. And
I don't think it's any guarantee of competence even.
Yeah. Sandy, I've had a couple of people contact me and anonymously tell me that some judges were saying that Poco meant more. A Poco 40 meant more. A staccato should be really short. Staccato is detached.
Yeah, I know about one judge who in the Philip Harper piece, the 20,000 Leagues, saying Poco 40 means more 40. louder.
Yeah.
Poco means little. So
Yeah.
crescendo poco a poco means crescendo little by little. So
Yeah.
poco 40 means a little 40, a little.
Yeah.
Right? Not more.
Yeah. And this is where the credentials of these people really get questioned in my eyes.
Yeah. Well, here's one here for you, right? I noticed this on Facebook. Well, I'm mates with all three of these people, right? But Roger Webster, Owen Farr, Richard Marshall, all three of them, that was the panel for the Swiss national solo competition at the back end of March, right?
They are the creme de la creme of brass band players.
Well, there's three people there who you can't question their credentials.
No.
You just can't.
No.
Right? And I know a solo competition is different than a band one, blah, 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 right? But those three know what a good band sounds like.
Absolutely.
They've all won a crap load of contests.
Yeah.
They've been involved at the highest level for a long time. Those three people, nobody going to that contest could have any complaints about being judged by those three.
I wouldn't either.
No, but
No.
that's what we need. Here's another one that came up yesterday, right? And we've talked before about my liking of watching the rugby and stuff, you know. So World Rugby, the governing body, has announced yesterday 2 new panel members. I'll read the thing out, right? And just bear with me for 2 minutes while I read this, right?
Yeah.
Okay, because I think it is quite pertinent. World Rugby has today confirmed the appointment of Dimitri Yashvili and Marcello Bosch as new members of the voting panel for the World Rugby Awards, men's 15s categories, further strengthening the peer-led jury that recognises excellence at the highest level of the international game. Both former internationals bring outstanding playing pedigrees and deep understanding of elite rugby, reinforcing the credibility and experience of one of the sport's most respected awards panels. So this is Yashvili, okay, Dimitri Yashvili. He was a French international, 61 caps, scored 373 test points, Grand Slams, 6 Nations in 2004, 2010. Club level, he made 289 appearances and scored 3,053 points, right? Yeah. Marcello Bosch was an Argentinian international, 39 test caps, European Challenge Cup winner in 2012, played for Saracens in England 2013 to 19, where he won 4 Premiership titles, 2015, 16, 18, 19, and 3 Champions Cups, 16, 17, and 19, 2016. So, and then it says, this is the bit, these appointments reinforce the standing of the World Rugby Awards as the sport's most prestigious peer-recognised honours, voted on by panels made up of former players, coaches and legends of the game whose experience spans generations, playing styles and rugby cultures. Now, to me, that thought, and I know it's slightly different.
Well, it works. It mirrors banding. Well, it should.
So what these 2 guys are joining the panel and they have gravitas.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You cannot argue with what these guys have done. They didn't ask me to join the panel because I've done bugger all.
Yeah.
Right? They asked these guys who have got umpteen test caps, point scorers, championship wins, cup wins, whatever else it is.
Yeah.
And they have a standing within the game. And I'm not saying this is us, right, or me personally, right, but I'm saying we need people who are recognised as being standard bearers for musical excellence. Yeah. That's what we're after. And if you can't prove that, I'm not interested. I'm sorry. So I think that points, this is how other pastimes, sports, whatever, organise themselves, right? Yeah. I think we can do better. I think we need to do better. I would be asking, what criteria? See, the big hitting countries, in Europe are Norway, Switzerland, Belgium, right? What do they use when they're choosing adjudicators, right?
Yeah.
Do they have an equivalent of ABBA in Norway, Switzerland, and Belgium?
I know for a fact they don't in Norway.
Right. So Norway is probably the beacon of them, of the three.
Yeah.
Although all three have some fantastic bands.
They do.
And all we are trying to do is I just want every band in Britain to be better.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think this is part of the way to do it.
Yeah.
They're just picking good musicians, aren't they?
They are.
All the time.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So we need to learn a few things from people abroad, but I think maybe one of them's that. I don't see the sort of people judging in Norway, Switzerland, and Belgium that are judging in Britain. No. I don't see this way of manufacturing adjudicators. One of the things you need to ask is, if we're accepting more and more adjudicators, there are less and less contests, but you have more and more adjudicators. Is it just so that they can get the money for an entry membership fee? Well, I don't know.
I've often wondered. I don't know. I've no idea what the membership fee is, but where does it all go?
Right. Okay.
Makes you wonder.
Admin.
Yeah.
And no, just to finish off, I know there have been some complaints about some of the appointments that were done at the area. We have talked to people. Some people have already had some meetings with area representatives. Some are in the pipeline. Some people are trying to go through the usual channels to get themselves onto these committees to maybe try and influence things, which is a good thing. If that's how it's run at the minute,
absolutely,
then that's fine. Yeah. But there are potential ongoing discussions and meetings with area committees to try and get a bit more. We just want it to be better all round, don't we?
Yeah, we must do better.
We're going to finish off with the good, the bad, and the dodgy.
Absolutely. The good.
Yeah, go on.
I think Flowers winning the European. At last, we get that title back in England.
Yeah.
Well done, Flowers. Well done, Paul Holland. You've worked so hard for that.
Absolutely.
You used to teach Paul, didn't you?
I did, yeah. When Paul was at college in Huddersfield.
You must be very proud.
Yeah, he's a lovely lad, and I'll tell you what he's done as well. This is not a flash in the pan. This is not this has been a steady, engineered, well worked out progression of a conductor and a band.
Paul started in the lower sections, didn't he?
Yeah, he
conducting.
did.
Having had a good career at Dyke playing.
You see, there's the first thing, right? So when he came to college, and he went to Dyke under Jim Watson, right? Yeah. So straight away, you're learning from a top notcher, right? Yeah. And yeah, he's gone about it the right way, and it's no surprise. It's a fantastic achievement. Don't get me wrong, because it's they're maybe, and by their own admission, they're not a sort of they're not one of the sort of well-known historical big name bands, right? Yeah. They're not a Dyke or a Foden's or a Brighouse or whatever else, right? So, but they've got some terrific players. We did an interview, didn't we, with Mr. Richards, and fantastic players, and I'm so chuffed for them. I think that's definitely a good thing, and it's quite a long time since an English band won that competition.
Absolutely. We've got to join Good this month, Sandy.
Yeah, we do.
Because I'm chuffed to bits that Black Dyke are back at the proms.
That's brilliant. I think that's
wonderful.
Brilliant. And it's again, it's no surprise because they are a very, very well organised bunch, and that will have been talked about probably for a couple of years. Yeah, and it's great to see them back. At the proms. albeit it's a Sunday morning prom. We're not going to get, I think, you have to, I might be wrong, going right back into maybe 81 or 74, Dyke and Grimy did a proms with Mr. Howarth. Yeah. And I think that was, I might be wrong, I think that was an evening one. I know we did one in 87 at Dyke, and
that was a Saturday afternoon.
It was a 5:30 start. I've just found that back out because we checked the repertoire. And isn't it strange that, you know, when these proms come up, we revert to the old Moorside Suites on again, right? Which is no problem. No problem at all. It's a fantastic piece of music. I'm so chuffed for Philip Wilby. Paganini Variations is a modern masterpiece, and that is on. There is one slight, and we'll put this under the bad, and it's a bit harsh, right? And I know, because I understand why this has come about. And I understand the time of day, and I understand what they're trying to do to get people in to that early evening prom before the main event sort of thing. But it did make my heart sink slightly when I saw this. They've got some big hitting music on. There's Philip Wilby, there's the host, there's some Gregson on and all that. Yeah. The one thing that did slightly make my heart drop a bit was that they're playing Orange Juice at the proms, and it's
probably it could well be not to do with the band, that
I know, and there's no slight on the band whatsoever, and I understand probably why it's being done. But there's just a bit of me, especially as being an ex-Grimy player and conductor. The amount of times that nearly every concert, are you playing Orange Juice? Because, and it's, you know, Orange Juice, Danny Boy, Death or Glory, you know, all the time. And it's
just about time we moved on from it, isn't it?
It's a good arrangement. Let's not get it wrong, right? It works really well. Kevin Bolton's arrangement, so I can see why it's being used, but also I just maybe feel that there would be better options. For light music, there's a myriad of light music stuff that could have been played, and what worries me slightly is that it's just holding. It's just back to the brassed off stuff again. And that it would be nice to I just think we're giving ammunition for the naysayers to have a go at us because you know, it's a guitar concerto that's you know what I mean. I just don't. I just think we could have, you know, it's just a slight. I understand why, and I'm torn between yes and no. But I think on the balance of it, I'm not sure that it's the best use of the short time we'll have at the proms.
And a wonderful band like Black Dyke.
No, I think the whole idea of Dyke doing it is brilliant, and they'll do the movement proud, I'm sure. It's just something about that piece. I know when I was, you know, wagging it, or even when I was playing, the days when I was playing, Ian Shires was Flugel. Shires, he got sick of playing it. Mark Walters was fed up of playing when I was wagging, you know, having to play it. That Mark, I mean, I think he said on the podcast, he felt almost shackled to having to play it. That he had no, you know, horn players, cornet players, euphonium, they could play what they wanted, you know, but he had to play Orange Juice. Which he would have maybe wanted to play something else, you know. I just think there's a little bit of that just makes my heart sink slightly.
But moving on to the dodgy. There was a fantastically organised competition called Contest in Birmingham.
Contest.
And I think the rules are fairly relaxed, but when your instrumentalist and soloist award goes to two principal borrowed players, I think it's sending out the wrong message, because it should be to encourage the players that are with their bands. Bringing in these players is all well and good, but then when they're taking away the awards, it doesn't sit well with me.
That probably needs a look, I think. Two fantastic players.
Yeah.
Young Luke Barker, who's at Flowers, and Chris Robertson at Brighouse. Yeah, brilliant players, no problem with that. But they are not members of
them bands.
Whichever bands it was.
I think it were Derwent and Sovereign, respectively.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's fine, have them playing, but they shouldn't be considered for the solo awards.
Yeah, I think the organisers need to look at that.
I'm probably think that, I wouldn't be surprised at all if the likes of Chris was a bit embarrassed by that.
No.
He's, I just think, it just makes you think next year, what's going to have to happen? Are they going to have to draft in, players of a similar standard, instead of using your own? It gives a false impression of the band standard as well, but there we go. I think that it's a little thing that needs looking at, that could be fixed quite simply by saying, if any individual instrumental awards are only available to fully registered members of the band.
Yeah.
Something like that. But there we go.
Yeah. Okay, so to wrap up, we'd like to thank our listeners for a huge postbag, phone calls, text messages, you name it, from all sorts of different people, and it's been wonderful to take their feedback. We would like to invite comments on possible future topics that you'd like us to look at. The email is smithandgrezzy, and the and is AND, smithandgrezzy@gmail.com. So that's us for April, and I'd like to thank you all for listening again, and we'll see you soon.